What's up, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Cover Band Confidential podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn some tricks and not have to play that bar again. Here in Atlanta, Georgia, this is Adam Johnson.
Here in Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
Dan, I want to thank you personally for taking the lead last week. That conversation with Sam was awesome.
Wasn't it? Yeah, we should definitely do more of that.
What's funny is, after the fact, because I didn't have the pleasure of speaking to him in person, we actually, a lot of our worlds overlap. His drummer's brother is a producer that my band tried to work with, and he knew a bunch of bands that I was like big fans of in the Chicago kind of indie punk scene in the late 90s and stuff. It was kind of fun to just sit there and be like, oh, you know him and you know them. So Sam will definitely be making his way back onto the show at some point in the near future.
Yeah. He'll have an album to promote before too long here, and we'll definitely do that.
Fantastic. So, you ready to just get into it?
Let's do it. You know what? I have one thing I want to say about the gig we played last night.
Go for it.
So actually, two things. We played last night at a place that was our return to the venue where we had our very first gig almost a year ago as this band. And when we were there a year ago, it was it's called DJ's Restaurant and Sky Lounge.
Yeah,
and
I've heard of that place actually.
Yeah, it's a good venue. It's in sort of the area between Greensboro and Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a pretty prominent music venue, and their Saturday nights are pretty hot. And then they have a Thursday night that's semi-hot, and we've been there on Thursday night twice, looking to get to, because Saturday is the show.
Yeah.
Since we were there, they built this thrust onto the stage. It was the last time we were there. It's like a very shallow, wide stage, so you kind of have to line up in a weird line. But we got there, and man, the stage is suddenly 10 feet deeper than it used to be. There's all this room for activities, And they had put in a new lighting system. They had, I think, 6. I believe they were Chauvet Intimidators on the back line, and 6 out in front of the front of the stage, and then he was also playing around with 2 of those Chauvet Volcanoes, the fog machine that shoots fog up and then illuminates them from below.
Yes.
Which, so he had his lighting guy was in and setting it all up and training him during our show. And I was very glad that I had set up the camera because while it's always a good idea to tape your shows because there's always a ton to learn, I also there's some moments where this lighting tech was doing some stuff with the lights that was just so musical and tasty and just really accented what we were doing. It's just you can't overstate the difference that kind of production quality edge can give to a show. Because it's really, really great.
Absolutely.
Super great. Also, here's the other big thing. This was our first show with in-ear monitors.
Haha. Now, was it just you, or was the whole gang along with it?
So Justin and I, the 2 of us in front, had them. Tony, the drummer, and Scott, the bassist, were working off of Tony's big, I don't know what size it is, a pretty sizable monitor on the back line. So a couple things that I learned. I am the front of house, right? So the big hurdle for me was trusting my mix. We ended up not liking having the front of house mix in our in-ears.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I still had a stereo mix, but I had our guitars and vocals panned to sort of place us on stage. And then the drum mic, we do Tony has a little sub mixer on the back line. He sends me a single line out of that for his whole mic'd kit. So that and bass pretty solid in the center of the soundstage, and then guitar and vocals panned in the directions we stand. I might break it down and give us separate mixes, but it's actually pretty good to have, when he sings on his mic to the left of me, I hear it kind of over where he is.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's not bad. And the stereo separation gives me plenty of monitoring of both of us, of our own performance.
Yeah. I would love to have stereo mixes, but due to the number of bodies on stage versus the number of outputs I have, we all are using mono mixes at the moment. So
yeah, it's pretty good. There are some places in I just reviewed the video of the show this morning. There are places where I wish that I had been a little more aware of what was happening front of house, because I would have tweaked things just a little. But I can see how I could pop down off stage and drop the earpieces and check that out pretty easily. The thing I need to work on is figuring out, timing that against what my hands have to accomplish on the guitar, because finding a spot in the show when I'm not needed for whatever that 30 seconds it takes to fumble my earbuds back in. And I'll probably get faster at that too. But right now it's a little awkward, and I ended up playing the second half of the second set with them just hanging because I couldn't organize it all. I'll probably get better at that. I also need to experiment with tips because I was adjusting them the whole show. So so there's like a lot to learn. But I will say, having the mix in my ears, it really is like listening to a CD of your band. It's pretty incredible. And I for anyone else who has been resisting it the way that I have been, consider giving up your resistance, because I can tell it made a big difference in my vocal performance. There are places in songs where I'm not sure I would ever have said I was not confident, but looking back at how it felt last night, the confidence that I suddenly had was a whole other ballgame. So it was pretty great. And it'll take us. Go ahead.
Yeah, for vocalist, it's kind of a slam dunk.
It really,
because it will save your voice almost immediately, because the mechanics of singing kind of change when you don't have to worry about amplitude. You can just focus more on technique and intonation and breath control and that kind of stuff, and you're not really worried about, am I getting up over this loud enough so I can hear if I'm hitting this note or not. So the other thing is, I have historically never been very confident in the falsetto range, and with in-ears I suddenly find that I have a falsetto, and probably the issue was it never had enough power behind it for me to feel good about it. But now that power is not an issue and I can just use the amplification, man, I can actually hit a lot of stuff in my falsetto. I actually have a pretty decent falsetto. Well, and that's the thing, is that the falsetto was always there. It's just your ability to monitor yourself and what you were doing up there was not present.
Exactly.
It's a totally different ballgame.
That really does change the whole thing. So, early days with that tool, but I'm very glad to be into it.
Cool. I've been a big fan of in-ear monitors, and it's funny because while you have just delved into the world of in-ears, the last 2 gigs that I have done, I have not had any, because it was the last 2 things I did is I did a solo acoustic thing at a country club last week, which was fine, rather uneventful. And then the week before that, I sang in a Chris Cornell tribute with a house band. So I went up. I was supposed to do just one song, and then one of the guys who was supposed to do it was he got stuck out of state and couldn't come. So I ended up singing a lot more than I was planning on. And singing that kind of music is difficult enough,
right?
And it's even more difficult when the monitoring situation is less than ideal.
Yeah.
But and that was one of those where I did have to worry about amplitude because I had to actually sell it. So. It was a fun night because I don't get to normally sing that way, but I'm glad I don't have to do that as a job because I don't think I could.
Yeah, I enjoyed some of the videos you posted. They were pretty high energy stuff.
Yeah, I posted the one on Spoon Man, and the audio is a little rough. But
it was a cell phone video, so you can't expect a lot out of the audio. But the video was clearly some energy coming off you on stage. It was good.
Yep, flex a different set of muscles. Anywho.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. I'm happy that everything worked out, and that video will probably be beneficial for you guys for promo purposes in the future, yes?
Oh, it absolutely will. Man, they're just some gorgeous moments.
Good. So the topic that we are covering today is one that has been making the rounds quite a bit on most specifically the Cover Band Central Facebook group. And it's pretty polarizing, but the topic we're covering today is tracks, and we're going to try and format this in a way that everybody kind of gets to hear their viewpoint. We will do a point counterpoint kind of approach. So my lovely co-host Dan will be on the counterpoint side, and I will be on the point side. So
and I should say, full disclosure, I don't actually feel very strongly about this topic, but I'm gonna because I think it's a divisive topic and one that just people have strong opinions about. I'm gonna be bringing up the arguments against tracks that I hear out there, and in my band we don't use, or haven't so far used, full song tracks. We use tracks to fill and iconic horn parts or whatever. We use it, the horns and the flute on Sledgehammer, Peter Gabriel, that sort of thing. So I'll be Adam. Well, what about representing some of you that I know are out there in the audience, much more than my own personal position.
Yeah. And on the same note, I do want to say welcome to everybody who's now tuning in because of this topic. I had mentioned on one of those threads that we would be covering it today in the on the podcast, and I had about 20 requests pop up. So this is clearly something that people are interested in, and I feel like the nays kind of drown out the other parties. So if you are curious, welcome. Thank you for tuning in, and email us your thoughts at coverbandconfidential@gmail.com for or against. So yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So I'm taking the pro track approach. I'm on the pro track side. My band uses them. I have been using tracks since my original band used tracks back in the early 2000s, back when it was, maybe the drummer had in-ear monitors if you were lucky. And he was the only person with the click. And, we had to come up with creative ways of sending it to front of house because none of this stuff was normal or widespread back then. But it's something that we just grew accustomed to. It also, we got used to playing to clicks pretty intently, and that was the kind of band that we were. We were a professional group that played to click tracks and had backing tracks, and we were just that kind of band. So this is old hat for me, and I think that there are plenty of benefits to using them. Do you have a counter, Dan?
I'm trying to represent the counter arguments. Mostly the counter arguments I see to using tracks are philosophical and aesthetic. All right. Yep. So, the counter argument is like, if you need that horn part, you should go out and get a horn player. There are horn players out there looking for work. And tracking is somehow lazy or inauthentic.
Yeah, I also hear a lot of it being cheating.
Listen, yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this. I saw and I'm not making something up, that I actually did see a guy with a guitar and a microphone performing in a restaurant to a full band of backing track, and the backing track had drums, bass, horns. I think it had a guitar track. I think it had backing vocals. And there this dude was with a guitar. And that, authentically, not even standing in for an opinion I see on the internet, that felt cheap to me. It felt like I wished I'd seen him just doing solo acoustic. I wish he didn't have all that production to try to sound like something he wasn't.
Yeah, so in that effect, it actually took away from his performance and did not add to it.
It did. It felt cheesy, and it wasn't. The tracks were fairly high quality.
Those tracks are usually bad,
Well, yeah. His
MIDI sequences or
his were not terrific. I mean, they weren't terrible. The quality of the track wasn't my objection, although I don't think they were fantastic. My objection was that it just felt like he was. It felt like his band had left him at the last show, and he was trying to compensate.
Interesting. So yeah, that's the one where we hear a lot. The other one that I, some of these again are philosophical approaches. The one that I kind of take issue with are the people that say people who use tracks aren't real musicians, and I take exception with that stance. And the main reason being is that almost every band that you see on television or, you know, plays songs that you love probably plays to tracks. So it is just kind of, you know, it is the way of the world currently. So
Yeah.
my the points that I want to make about tracks are, I feel like they're pretty solid, but they are as follows. Backtracks can be useful for a number of reasons. One, finding great musicians is not always easy. You know, we are by definition, we are local bands. So your band can theoretically only be as good as the people that populate your city. So, you know, maybe in your city there's 2 good guitar players and a solid drummer, but no bass player. Or maybe you have, you know, a great primary setup guitar, bass, and drums, but there are no keyboard players. That's one I would say justification that tracks might be useful. The other one that is kind of related to lineup is that you may only need tracks for certain songs. So if you guys, like, to your point, Dan, you were saying that you like, okay, well, we use them for a couple of things, like the flute in Sledgehammer, which is, you know, a very distinct. It would be very difficult to replicate. So, or maybe you have a song.
It wouldn't be the same song without it. So it's crucial that, you know, it's not providing any structure to the song, but it's such a moment in that song you just couldn't do the song without it.
Right. Or maybe there's a sax solo in one song, and you wanted, instead of, you know, having the guitar player try to cop it, just leave it in, and it's fine where it is. That's another thing you can do. And also, if you maybe you have sax on a couple of songs, or, you know, can you actually hire a saxophone player to play 2 songs in your 2-hour set? You know, would he feel like it was worth his time and energy to do that? Or you may not have a sax player available to you at all. Those are all reasons why. I'll say this: the reason why we started playing with tracks was because finding a keyboard player was difficult. And when we did find a keyboard player, we had a situation where we were traveling to an out-of-state gig. He decided that he wasn't going to follow the contract that we had given him. And when I called him on it, he said, "I'm not coming." So we were then, you know, 300 miles away from our home base, holding the bag.
So finding a keyboard player is one thing. Finding a professional keyboard player
is a completely different thing.
A whole other thing.
Yeah. So I had to scramble because I had redone all of our clicks and all of that to take stuff out. And I had worked with this guy for weeks up to this point, and he just decided that he didn't want to have to deal with it. So yeah, that was one of the worst gigs of my life.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It wasn't actually, the gig was fine. It was my headspace, where my head was at was completely just trash though. I had there was no enjoyment in that at all because I had been emotionally kind of held hostage by the situation. So and to be honest, we haven't really, we've had keyboard players come in and go, but I'm never going to get rid of those tracks because I know what can happen now. So,
well, so then here's a counter argument to that, right? A counter argument you see out there as well. If you can't do it with your personnel you've got, then you shouldn't be doing it. You have no business playing a song that you can't do with the people you've got.
Okay. The question, I guess the counter to that for me is, you're not in my band and you can't tell me what I can and can't play.
Fair enough.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, I don't feel like it's anybody's business. You can say, oh, they play to tracks and they're lame as a musician. That's fine. I've gotten to the point now where I can hear it immediately. But I'm not going to be at your shows most of the time anyway. And the people that are going to your shows typically aren't musicians. They are people who are there to drink and dance. The one thing that I say in these arguments is I can't pay my rent with the respect of my peers.
Yeah.
So a musician's opinion on tracks is, kind of a moot point, because, it's like somebody my age going, I don't get Radio Disney. You're not supposed to get Radio Disney. I'm not their target market.
Yeah.
So, that's my main thing. There's not to say that there isn't something to taking the available personnel and putting your spin on stuff. I think the Handsome Young Ladies are a fantastic example of that. They are a trio, and they do what they do in a very unique way, and that is, that's their calling card. The main reason that a lot of bands, especially bands from the 80s or that do 80s music, tend to use tracks is because there's not really a cohesive way of replicating it live without it.
Yeah.
And even back then they were using, digital drums and drum machines and programming and samples and all of that stuff. So it was never as pure an art form as people may, allege it to be.
Yeah, that's certainly true. This is, as with so many other topics, it kind of all comes down to human beings just really want to feel right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so we'll take things that really ought to just be opinions and make them into laws and rules.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of that, especially once you divorce the text you're interacting with from a human being who's over there. And suddenly I have every right to tell you how you ought to live. And it's kind of nonsense, but it's what we do as people.
Yeah, I mean, the thing again that I really took issue with is there are people out there who denigrate musicians who are in bands that play to tracks, and I think that learning to play to a metronome and committing to playing to a metronome live is a very difficult skill to master, and it should be respected as such, because not everybody can.
That's the other side of it. Yeah, that's the other side of it. There's the whole like, oh, it's lazy, it's cheating, it's not real music. Then there are the people who've tried it once, and their objection is it's too hard, it's too much work.
Yeah,
I mean, you've been telling me the last couple of days about all the tracks you're building for this '90s show you have coming up.
Yeah, so we're doing. We're still in the midst of Fanny Pack Friday. Actually, fun story. I don't know if you heard on the news, but Ticketfly there was some sort of cyber attack on Ticketfly, which is a ticket vendor, and it shut down a bunch of venues' websites. We got caught up in that, so currently our show is not for sale. They're trying to get all that figured out, but yeah, that's a fun little development. But yeah, so Fanny Pack Friday, we, the main push for this is that we are adding 90s tunes to our repertoire. So, just like any other situation, if a band is taking on a new set of music, I've got to basically onboard 20 songs. Some of the songs have tracks, some of them don't, but they all have clicks. So I still have to kind of put my fingers on every single song to make sure that, they're arranged the right way. So, and one thing that we're doing is, which is kind of counter to my argument is, what we want to do is we want to be able to play the songs as if the track wasn't playing. So the track is just there as, as a garnish to what the band is doing. It's not the whole show. So, we're looking at different arrangements and kind of, I'm always a fan of doing research on, other people who have done it, and hey, let's look at this arrangement. Let's see what these guys are doing. Because you're going to be able to, it's going to flesh it out more than, standing there, for 4 bars while the track plays, this one piece. You can have the entire band doing that exact thing. So the other reason why I'm using tracks for these songs is one of the other reasons why I think tracks are useful. Typically, we use tracks from karaokeversion.com, which is a website that specializes in this particular thing. And what they basically do is, for $3, they give you the multis for all of these songs. So if I'm trying as a music director to onboard 20 songs for my players, I want to make sure that they have the resources they need to do a good job. So part of my workflow also includes going on to Karaoke Version and soloing or remixing the songs to have different pieces prominently displayed. and creating basically learn tracks for my guys. So typically I'll do a bass learn, a guitar learn, and a BGV learn. And in those, I'll bounce a copy with those particular channels turned up and everything else turned down. So, it's very prevalent and prominent. And then that way, my guys know exactly what they're supposed to be playing. And there's no mystery to it. And, they have the resources they need to do a good job. So that's another way that I use that. And it's also really good for subs, if somebody comes up and I need a guitar player or a bass player, I'll say, hey, here's this Google Drive folder and here's what you need to know. And, as a fill-in, I can't imagine, the relief that, it must bring for guys, because it removes any curiosity or, vagueness of what is expected of you. So yeah, having tracks for your subs is super useful.
Yeah. And I think there is, it's in that category of sort of technical assistance that some people have an aversion to, that's valid if that's the way you want to roll. All sort of DIY, every sound is made by something physical happening on stage. That's cool. There are people who feel like pitch correction is a cheat.
Yeah. Or harmonizers,
rather than an artistic choice. Or harmonizers. Do you use anything like that?
On my solo stuff, I do sometimes. A lot of times I forget to push the button, so it's just there. But
yeah, I do. I have a TC Helicon Voice Live that I have a pitch correction happening in full time. Not a lot, just a hint. Boy, and I'll tell you, in the in-ears, you can hear the beats when it's doing it much more clearly than through the PA. It sounds a little flangey, but that's the sound coming back from the monitors beating against the pitch happening in your larynx, right? It's only happening literally inside your head.
That's part of the reason why I like singing with in-ears is you can focus on that kind of stuff, and it's way more. Well, it's just clearer. You just you're in a better headspace, as far as what you're producing with your voice.
Yeah.
On a related note, with in-ears, one of the other things that we use tracks for is we play to clicks for basically everything, and one of the things that we typically add to those clicks are cues. So you're getting 8 counts in, you're getting 8 counts out. You're if there's a key change coming up, you hear it. If there's like a special, like the band drops out or there's specific hits, like those are all notated on the click track. And everybody on the stage is wearing in-ears, so everybody is always on the same page. There's no like, wait, do we do another bar of this or what? Like it's all very laid out. And depending on the platform you use to play your tracks back, that for some people, that's one of the arguments against tracks, is that it's rigid and you have to follow along. One of the guys said, well, I hope your guitar player doesn't want to add, another 4 bars to his solo. I was like, first of all, nobody wants to hear another 4 bars of another guitar solo anyway. Second of all, if you set up your tracks with markers, and you have, if you use Main Stage or you use Ableton, you can navigate through those songs and through those song sections on the fly. So if you want to loop the bridge section 3 times because the crowd's feeling it, like that is totally doable. And you've got a net. It's not just everybody kind of figuring out where it is. In my case, it says bridge at the beginning of that bar. So if it goes back to bridge, then the players know. So.
And what's that like to loop on the fly like that? If you make that call that you're going to go around, you're going to play the whole outro twice. Logistically, there you are with a guitar. What do you do to make that happen?
In those moments, that is something that the person who is controlling the tracks has to dictate. So in our case, that would be the drummer, and the drummer, you can set up a controller to move sections, and you can also set up controllers to loop sections. That's not something that we typically do, but it is feasible. Most of the people that are doing that are using Ableton, and they're using something like one of the big button boards where one button does, it either triggers an entire song, or you can trigger sections, and you can assign buttons to certain things. And you can do that in main stage, which is what we currently use for track playback. But it's just not something that we have ever dealt into.
Seems like that's something you'd really need to work on. I mean, a drummer's hands and legs are all busy too. I don't, that kind of editing on the fly feels like it's that'd be pretty intense. But it's good to know that there is that flexibility. I will say this, in terms of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, another thing that a lot of drummers who are in charge of tracks use is they have foot pedals on the left side where their hi-hat typically is. Mm-hmm. So that's another one of those things where your hands could be doing something, and the foot that's not doing most of the work can do those other things.
Yeah. I mean, Tony triggers our samples from a Roland sampler pad. Mm-hmm. And he's an octopus already, so he seems to have enough arms for that. It's amazing.
And are you using an SPD 80, like just the Octopad, or are you using the SPD SX?
I don't know the model of it. We can load it with samples.
Is it red, or is it does it have red accents?
I don't know.
Okay. Because I mean, some people are actually loading their tracks onto the sampler pads, and you can do it that way too.
Yeah, I could totally see that working.
So,
I'll tell you this too about flexibility. And this one, I'm not is legitimately a thing that I think would pull me away from being as linearly track oriented as you are. Mm-hmm. Is the ability to call an audible on the set list. I guess given those editing functions you just talked about, maybe that's not an impossibility. Yeah, I mean,
we set up the set lists. So the way that that main stage does it is on the left-hand side, there's a navigation set. So we arrange the songs in the set list, and if we want to call an audible, basically it's there's 3 folders. There's set 1, there's set 2, or however many sets there are, and then there's extra. And then extra's got every song on there. So there's 200 songs in that playlist. So if I want to call, Jesse's Girl and it's not on the set list, I've got him sorted alphabetically. He just goes down to J and he presses play. It's really not that big of a deal as far as that goes.
That's good.
Or
that's good.
We can play it without the track. We can just, we'll do it live. So if we wanted to do, towards the end of the night, we might do Sweet Child of Mine. We typically don't play that one to a click because you don't really need to.
Yeah.
There's always room for spontaneity. I know a lot of people think that that's not the case, but one of the I think one of the true gifts of players who do play to tracks is they come up with creative ways of creating moments in the rigidity of a track like that. So
yeah, and I'll tell you, there's just nothing that brings out creativity like constraint, right? I mean, creativity can kind of only exist in an environment of constraint.
Yeah.
That's good. Because I really would hate to lock myself into a playlist and then be stuck there. Last night we pulled out Moni Moni, which we had not played live before. We'd only rehearsed it once, in fact. And the suddenly being on the live wire, the high wire with a song that we were not totally sure was stage ready. It was the highlight of the night. It was so much energy, and the crowd just totally responded to our being like, okay, here we go. It's pretty great.
Well, and another thing, that has happened to us before is, and it's another con about tracks, is that tracks can fail. And we have had gigs where the tracks didn't work. And we went completely live. And again, this is not something that we use as a crutch for musicality. My band is very, very talented, great players. And when the tracks went down, well, the set list opened right up.
I'm sure.
What we had written down, not all of it worked. So we either did different arrangements for it, or we skipped it and we came up with other stuff, and we stretched things out, and it was perfectly fine. Like the party they were loving it because, we were stretching things out. And we were kind of doing some stuff, and they could tell that we were really locked in. I turned to the guitar player at the end of the night. And it's like, dude, I felt like I was alive. He goes, that's exactly what I was like. I was feeling that, but I didn't know how to say it. But yeah, that was an interesting night.
Well, so listen, an anti-track person is going to say, well, that was because you weren't faking it to your crutch.
Well, that's to be fair. It's more a matter of facing adversity and overcoming it. You know, if we weren't, we were having fun during the first set. The first set was a blast because, you know, we were having a good time. This just, you know, created a unique challenge. And, you know, not everybody likes a challenge, but, you know, the guys in the group were up for it. And so, you know, we went for it, and it was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And if we had started the night without tracks, I don't think the crowd would have noticed, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
And again, that's a good argument for or against. But it really kind of boils down to the last part of my argument is no one cares.
Yeah. The crowd doesn't notice.
They don't care.
Yeah.
You know, if I, you know, no one is walking home from, you know, a show going, man, I really wish there were 6 people on stage instead of 5, or I wish there were 8 people on stage instead of 6.
Yeah.
They just go, man, that was really fun. They sounded really good.
Yeah. Nobody even wonders, like, gosh, where were those horns coming from?
Right.
It's like they just don't think that hard about it.
Well, and that's another one of the arguments is that you're lying to the audience. Like the audience, you have to, there would have to be non-truth to give to the audience for them to care enough to be offended. Like that, there is no argument there. And I would just like to, I'm sorry, this might bruise the egos of, you know, some people out there, but if you're in a cover band, you are not in the music business. You are in the entertainment business.
That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're in the entertainment business, then your obligation to your audience is to provide the best possible performance for the best value. If your objective is to provide the best possible performance for the best value, does that sound like something backing tracks might help you to do? Just a thought. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. By the way, people who are in the music business, like touring original acts, use tracks all the time.
Right, and that's the other thing is that people are... Oh, go ahead.
Well, your point's more closely to what we're doing. I'll tag mine on in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, you know, talking about, you know, the music business versus the entertainment business. That's one of the reasons why people say cover bands shouldn't do it, is because pro bands do it. And I'm like, wait a second. Aren't we trying to be pro bands? Like, isn't that what the objective is to get good enough to do this, like, for real?
Yeah. People who recorded it need a track to play it live. So why do you think we wouldn't?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It could be a generational thing. It could be an intimidation thing. It could be staring at the. I mean, trust me, no one understands the daunting task of setting tracks up for a band who didn't use them before, like I did, because I built them from the ground up, and had to do a bunch of them, and it took hours and hours. Like, that's the running joke with my band, is like, I still haven't broken even on this project. Because if I build my hours, like, I'd be so in the hole right now, just ridiculous. So it is a time investment. On the other thing is that, you know, there are bands that press themselves that way, 100% live, no tracks. Like, are you making more money than the bands that are using tracks or don't mention it in their promo? Does Aerosmith or Muse put that on their posters when they play in town?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. Again, it's just it's a different mindset. And if the past few years have taught me anything, is that there are just people literally on the other side of a viewpoint that want the exact opposite of what I want, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, the thing that sort of the attitude about that I find has me level up as a human is to get that for them that's valid. And if it's important to them that every single note is played live on the stage by an actual human manipulating an instrument, you know, God bless. If that's going to be a selling point for them, I have no problem with that. You know, and I invite them to have no problem with people who do it another way.
Yeah. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just out there. We're trying to make money. So, you know, we should be supporting one another and not dumping on one another.
Yeah, but not if you cheat. Not if you're one of those track cheaters.
Right. I did get in trouble on Cover Band Central for posting a check in a post. And I was like, the life of a cheating cheating cover band.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, it was a deposit check. It wasn't even like a full one, but it was in the thousands. And man, that people did not, people were not fond of that. And I get that. I was just in a sassy mood.
You were showing off.
I wasn't. It wasn't showing off as much as it was. I was just trying to stir stuff up. I was trying to get a rise out of people, and it worked. Yeah. But it also got a rise out of the mods. So I took a little time out.
There you go.
I'll take my.
Speaking of tracks, there's a video and how they can go wrong. There is a video if you Google Greensboro Van Halen jump.
Oh, we all know about YouTube. Greensboro Van Halen.
We all know about it. It's right down the street from me. It's I've talked before here about how Greensboro here in North Carolina, we're central in the state, so a lot of big acts come through here because it draws from all the major metros around us. And if you don't know about this video, it's unclear and much argued about whether the track was being played at the wrong sample rate and therefore the wrong key, the wrong pitch, or if Eddie's guitar was out of tune. But so that thing starts up and go ahead. As
a music nerd and a person who does a lot of track building, it was definitely played back at the wrong sample rate, which adjusted the whole it basically put it in an in-between pitch that there was no key to play it in.
Right.
So, and yeah, I mean, there was no way for them to catch up with that because it was the wrong speed. It was the wrong pitch. It was all wrong. And that is why you rehearse.
Well, I mean, Van Halen's no slouch. I think technical issues can just come up at any time, right? What I love about that video is that they did not, they forged through that thing. You can hear Eddie trying to bend back up into that key as hard as he can, and they were a hardworking band for a reason. They did not. It would have been possible to stop, crap, everybody, sorry, we stupid tech, and shake the fist at the back of the room, and that would have been the unprofessional move. What they did was they made the best of it, and they kept going, and the show must go on. They slugged through it, and it's. I have seen some bands. Not cover bands, tends to be original bands where the tolerance for on stage glitching is low. I watched a dude stop a song in the middle because his guitar went a little out of tune, and God, it just hurt me to watch somebody do that. Just don't ever do that. Just don't ever. I don't care if you can get away with it because there's not a track you're playing with. Do not stop a song in the middle. Fix it. Make your way through. Make a joke out of it. Have some fun with it. Have it be part of the show. Boy, oh boy. So I'm proud of what Van Halen did there.
Yeah. The only time I feel like it's okay to stop something in the middle of a song is if something is wrong, like physically wrong. So I've seen bands stop because people are fighting in the crowd or somebody is being mistreated. Like that's I feel like that's justifiable.
If it's a safety issue, that's different. If it's a performance issue, no. Stand tall and fight your way through it.
Yeah. Yeah, we've all had those moments. Train wrecks still happen. Yep. It is what it is.
Yep. Yeah, and once you played with a group for a while, we've gotten there in the last few months in the Clanky Lincolns that when something goes a little bit awry in a song, somebody misses the entrance to the next verse or something, we don't even meet eyes about it anymore. We're so in sync, and so the band telepathy is working so well. We can all correct that thing as a unit, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm excited about is I bought that X Live card for the X32, which basically multi tracks our shows. We've got one coming up in a couple of weeks where we'll get to try it out. But I'm really anxious or not really anxious, but excited to have that kind of resource, because then it's having the board recordings, you'll be able to pick out exactly what happened as far as post-mortem goes. So I'm interested in that prospect. So
cool.
So yeah, man, at the end of the day, bands do what you want to do. I can go into just real briefly about how we set tracks up and how we play them back. And if you have more questions, just email us at coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to show you either with videos or a blog post on what it looks like. So basically what I'm doing right now with with the Fanny Pack Friday stuff is I bought a bunch of tracks, and here's a pro tip. If you're on karaokeversion.com, don't buy all of your tracks all at once. Buy them in about 10 to 11 song chunks, because for every few purchases you make, you get a free song. So if you break it up, you may, cut, $10 to $12 off of your purchase if you just break them up a little bit.
Tip.
And what I do is I typically pre-mix all of them, because one of the cool things that they do is they give you all the tracks. You can solo, you can mute them, you can pan them. So I go ahead and pan the clicks hard left and turn off the things I don't want to hear and turn down the things I don't want to hear quite as much. And then I download them. Once they're downloaded, I use Logic to do any editing, because sometimes, they have the album version and I want to do the radio version, or like we're doing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and it's the whole freaking song. Nobody wants to hear 3 minutes of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
No.
So, I had to cut that one up a little bit to fit what people are accustomed to. And then I add cues. So I add our counts, I add our song titles. I have created a script in Automator on OS 10 that converts whatever I write to speech, and then makes that a WAV file that sits on my desktop. So if I want to do Ice Ice Baby, I write the word Ice Ice Baby somewhere on the screen. I copy it, I run that script, and then I get a little. Actually, no, it won't let me play it because I've got it. I've got the interface set up. But yeah, so I've got a bunch of those. And I also do them to create specific cues. I also have this lovely young lady who speaks our cues as well, that I got out of an Ableton session that I've used. So, and then I bounce those to MP3 and load them into MainStage. I have created a custom layout for MainStage. If you would like that, I can send it to you. Again, just shoot me an email. And that's where we load all of the MP3s in and play them back. And it's just a split mix. So the left channel, it's a stereo out that goes to two separate channels on the board. One of them is click, which is pre-fader that goes to all of the players, but not to front of house. And then the track itself, which is a mono just mix of the instrumentation or percussion that I have chosen. And that's it. It can be done on an iPad. It can be done on a phone. We use a laptop right now, but that might change soon. So, and that's it.
Simple enough. There you go.
Yeah, really, it isn't as hard as people make it out to be. It can be as difficult as you want it to be. You can run a full Logic or Pro Tools session with multiple outputs and a big interface that goes into individual inputs. You can go that route, and that's what most of the pros do. But for those of us who are not playing stadiums, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents on tracks.
Seems like we pretty much covered it, and then some tangential goodies too. So
yep, good stuff, good talk. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said, any questions or requests, shoot us an email at coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. I might
ought to say here, we've been watching the download numbers, and there's some of you. Yeah. There's not none of you. That's
we have an audience now. We didn't when we started, but we do sort of now.
And 10 episodes in, not bad.
Yep. Happy 10th anniversary.
There you go.
A few months ago, Dan and I were like, "Hi, I've never met you. Let's do a podcast," and we did, and that's where we are right now. So, I value your insight and your friendship, and I'm glad that you're here.
Indeed. Yep. Very much enjoying connecting with you and sharing our wisdom and learning and all that stuff.
Yep. It's all good stuff. So we will cut the love fest for now. You will have to tune in next week to hear the rest of it. From here in Atlanta, Georgia, This is Adam Johnson.
Dan Ray here from Greensboro, North Carolina.
You have been listening to the Cover Band Confidential Podcast, Episode 10. Have a good week.